I just have a few announcements to make. The first one's about the exhibit at the Somerset Courthouse that's supposed to begin in December. And Roman has graced our presence and came back from Iceland just to make this announcement. So, Roman, if you could say a few words about the exhibit.
So we've set up a contest, Jack set up a contest where you can submit images. We've had some issues in prior years where not enough people were submitting. So we decided to raise the limit per neighbor to 6 images. Better to have a lot of people do metal prints or photo prints, those take lead time to, it's not something you can do on your own. So we need to know, like, kind of more upfront what the level of interest is and how many people are submitting. If anybody has any specific questions, now's a good time to ask them.
Is there a closing date on submissions?
Not technically, because just the way the system works, to make them available, so it still has to be before the closing date. So the closing date is technically the day the exhibit goes up. But in practice,
but what about on Photo Contest Pro?
That's what I mean. On Photo Contest Pro, yeah. Really, we need to. There's two little deadlines. If you want to have a chance at having your image selected for the annual advertising, then you should have it submitted. If it's going up on December 1st, you should have it probably by like the very end of October or the first week in November at the latest. It used to have to be, back when everything was analog, that they used to have it in by the end of September, but now they just, like, everything's digitized, so it's not as big a rush.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any other issues, any other questions or anything, just feel free to email me.
Also, if anybody hasn't been next door, please be sure to stop in to the room next door. There's a gallery exhibit there. And our new member, Lenny McDonald, has 2 prints displayed in there. And this is part of the Westfield Art Association exhibit called Nature, Abstraction, and Observation. So when you get a chance, stop in next door and see the art and see Lenny's beautiful images, and they're only there until the 26th, so if you want to see them, unless you're coming back, today's the day. And speaking of member displays, I just notified today that our very own Wayne Greenstone will have a series of his peregrine falcon photos on display in an exhibit entitled The Peregrine Project at the Waywick Wildlife Art Gallery at New Jersey Audubon Sherman Hoffman Wildlife Sanctuary. The exhibit can be viewed beginning October 1st through January 25th. Congratulations, Wayne. So next Thursday at 7:30, we have one of our in-between presentations, and it will be a Zoom presentation by Nick Palmieri about metering and focus. He goes through all the metering and focusing systems from all the big manufacturers. And it will be a Zoom, and I will send out the link early next week for the Zoom. Then on Monday, October 3rd, there will be a bonus Zoom program courtesy of Cranford Milburn Camera Club. Again, Nick Palmieri will be presenting his program, How to Prepare an Image for Competition. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it. For anybody who hasn't seen it, it's some very good information about putting your photos in. And that's courtesy of Cranford Milburn, and I will get the link from them, and I will forward it on to all the CamNats members.
Our guests, welcome.
Pardon?
Our guests, welcome.
Welcome where?
To the Zoom presentations. These extra ones.
As long as we don't run out of licenses, I mean, I think we should be okay.
Let's have that one person.
Okay, just send me an email and we'll talk about it. Okay. So, but we should be okay. Also, our NJFCC Fall Nature photos are due on October 6th, and the pictorials are due on October 10th. And our next meeting here at the EEC will be a program called Abstracts in Nature, presented by Ellen Stein. So that will be in person here. It will be one of our few in-person presentations. The recording of tonight's competition will be available on YouTube sometime tomorrow. The link will be shared as soon as the recording is posted. And tonight is our first competition of the year, Ornithology and General Nature, and we'd like to give a warm welcome to our judge, Al Brown. Welcome, Al. And now, I turn it over to Jack and Al.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
September, General Nature B, Hudson River Dawn.
Excuse me, before we get started, you guys still do allow...
Can't hear you. What?
You guys still do allow black and white, correct?
Yeah.
Monochrome?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to check. Okay, you know, you caught this at a very nice time early on. Obviously, you know, you have a really nice sky here. Adds a lot of interest. Obviously, that nice pink and orange band you have with the sunrise helps add interest here too. Obviously, the thing for me that catches the reflection in the river and the water. I think that all adds for a great deal of interest here. 8.
And first pass is 7.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Rainforest.
Very nice presentation you have here. I think you did well handling your exposure here. Certainly nice sharpness in throughout in the foreground, especially with the very prominent trees and their roots. Certainly the moss adds a lot of interest too. I think you did well here. I think if you wanted to do something, you could probably crop it in from the left just a little bit. But otherwise, I think you did well. 7. Eight. 9.
General Nature B, honorable mention, Hudson River Dawn, Wayne Greenstone. Equal merit, Rainforest, David Howard. General Nature A class. Cannot see that. Why Ocean Well?
Okay, certainly caught a interesting location to photograph here. I think you did a nice job with your selection of your shutter speed. All the rock formations surrounding the pool look relatively sharp where they need to be. I like the fact that you kept your sky to a minimum because there's not a lot of interest there. I guess if you want to experiment, you probably could have taken even a little bit more of this down from the top. But I like what I see here, 7.
Sunrise at Blackwater.
I have a laser pointer if you want it.
Yeah, I'll borrow it. Thank you. A very interesting and moody photo you have here. Obviously, with the sun at its position in the sky, creates a lot of nice color throughout. Certainly the birds in the middle of the frame and reflecting in the water looks very nice too here. 7.
Sunset in Cape May.
Another nice photo you have here. I see you got this at a really nice time of the evening, creating a lot of nice, very soft tones here. Kind of in between with the sky, you know, with the brighter band up there, and I guess it's a personal choice, obviously, is whether you crop that out or leave it in. Obviously, I have the judges since you left it in. In terms of impact, I don't really see a lot of it here. Maybe a little bit of a tighter crop, just right along here. Helps keep the focus on the eye in the lower part of the image. 6.
Around the Bend.
Okay. Again, a similar comment. You know, you took a nice location here, and you know, given the fact that the sky really isn't all that interesting, you chose to incorporate a lot of the sky being reflected in the water down here. I'm looking at this photo as maybe you want to try to crop this in more of a panoramic type orientation instead of a square one, to help keep your eye focused on the trees and the foliage, because really that's where the interest for me would be. 6.
White pocket blue owl.
Very nice image you have here. A lot of leading lines coming up from the base in the foreground to the top. Appreciate that you kept the sky to a minimum here. Obviously the tone of the sky does add some interest, but if you had incorporated more of it, I think it would have lost some impact. Nice image you have here. 7.
Marsh reflections.
Okay. I think you did a nice job here with the reflections being captured in the water. I don't mind the trees being in the background. I think they add a little bit of interest. As I'm looking at this, I think you could have boosted your saturation a little bit as it's being projected. But other than that, I think it's a pleasing image. I like to see it again. 7.
Waterfall abstract.
There's an interesting composition you have here. I always tell people the shutter speed you choose for these waterfalls is a personal thing for the photographer. Some people like their water a little rougher, as you see here. Some people like a little bit more on the silky or milky looking side. Again, that's a personal thing. The big thing is how you handle your exposure. I don't see anything that's too blown out here. I think I'd like to see this again. 7.
Sunrise.
Nice image you have here. I like the panoramic type orientation you chose to display this in. You know, there's enough of a interesting formation in the clouds in the sky to add some interest. Certainly the birds circling around had some interest also. And catching the sun coming over the horizon adds some interest here too, 7.
Radnor Lake, Tennessee.
Interesting choice of orientation you took here. I do like the fact that you have the branch popping out of the water. It was a little bit of an anchor point in the image. I think that helps you out here a little bit. There is some nice detail in the trees in the background. I think I would have liked to seen a little bit more of the foreground here in front of you. But I think you did a nice job here, 7.
Second beach at night.
Nice composition you have here. I think the panorama orientation works really well for this photo. I think you did fairly well considering the conditions you had to work under. The formations look like they do have some detail in them. I would say they're tack sharp. Certainly the sky adds a lot of interest. 7.
Sand art.
Now, this is kind of a cool and different image you have here. Certainly the lines in the sand add some interest. And certainly the two shells towards the top of the photo add some interest too, instead of just having the sand there. 7.
Aerial interior Kauai waterfalls.
Really nice landscape image you have here. Some nice detail throughout the image. I think you did well with your exposure. Certainly the waterfalls had a nice little touch here. 7.
White pocket at sunset.
Nice formation you chose here. I appreciate the fact that it takes up a lot of the frame. A lot of nice detail. Even a little bit of a leading line still here, coming up through off the side, adds some interest. 7.
Ice.
Interesting formation you chose here. These don't pop up all the time, despite the fact even if you go out looking for them. I think you did pretty well with keeping everything sharp and kind of concise. There isn't anything that runs off too far in any of the edges here either. 7.
Late light on the beach.
Nice capture you have here. This formation here adds a nice anchor to the photo. And I don't mind the placement in the center of the photo either. I think that kind of helps you out here too. There's some nice, interesting clouds in the sky. 7.
Milky Way over Kilauea Crater.
Very interesting composition you have here. Certainly, almost two separate images you have here with the crater itself and then the Milky Way in the background above it. They kind of work together here. 7.
Monument Valley Desert Scene.
You know, I like the position that you took this image from. I really do like this tree coming in at an angle here. Obviously, having the monuments in the background adds some interest too. I think just to have taken a static picture of the tree by itself wouldn't really have lent too much to it from an artistic standpoint. 7.
Oregon.
Nice image you have here. You caught this at a nice time of the day, especially with the cloud formations in the sky. The rock formations themselves look like they're relatively sharp. I think if you wanted to do something, you probably could have cropped this off here and let this go all together, only because it's a little bit brighter than the rest of the image. Certainly it's not blown out, but it is a little distracting. That, or you could have toned it down a little bit in post, perhaps. But it's a nice image. 7. Eight. 9. 9. 7. 7. 8. 7. 8. 8. 9. 8. 7. 8. 8. 8. 7.
General Nature A class, honorable mention. Y. Ocean Well, Susan Bronhut. Sunrise, Peter Engelhardt. Second Beach at Night, Jordan Basin. Sand Art, Shlomo Habib. White Pocket at Sunset, John Grail. Late Light on the Beach, Shlomo Habib. Milky Way over Kilauea Crater, Susan Bronhut. Monument Valley Desert Scene, John Grail. Equal Merit, Sunrise at Blackwater, Jim Duffy. White Pocket Blue Hour, John Brawl. Aerial Interior Kauai Waterfalls, Susan Bronhut. General Nature A, B.
Salon.
Sorry, I'll get it right. Salon. Too fast, Jack. Give me a second. General Nature Salon. South American
Steps.
Interesting image you have here. Certainly you have a little bit, as I see this, a little bit of a leading lines coming through with all the grass. Looks a little windswept to me. I think I would like to have seen a little bit stronger anchor to this somewhere along the way. You know, because of the lighting, the background doesn't appear to be of too much interest, and it's just because I don't see a lot of detail in the formations all along through here. This foliage here does break all this up, but it's a little bit further back in the picture here than I think I would like to see here.
Blood Moon.
Interesting composition you have here. You know, I think there's just enough light on the foliage and obviously the tree here to help bring them out and add some interest here along with the moon. The moon here is a nice touch. We don't know that it's really like the focal point because of its size in the photo, but it is a nice composition. I'd like to see it again, Seth.
A Wonder of Nature.
You know, you have an interesting formation here. There's certainly some nice light on it. And here I do appreciate the faster shutter speed. You chose to help freeze the water. I think that adds a little bit of drama to it. Here you probably could have cropped off this part of the sky and really just kept your focus here. That's where the anchor is to me in this photo, and I think you did a really nice job with that. I'd like to see it again though, Seth.
Early Morning Fog.
You know, it's a nice presentation you have here for a monochrome image. It has a nice, very soft, moody feel to it. Certainly having, I believe that's a loon down in the bottom right-hand corner, adds a nice little touch to it along with the fog. 7.
Spring at Eagle Cliff Falls.
Nice job here. You know, I like this portion of the falls that you caught. You know, you did a nice job handling the water, handling the whites in the water. This is a little warm there. I don't know if that's from projection or not. Nice line coming through here, adds some interest also. And coming up with this little smaller waterfall in the back. Even the rock formations back here has some nice detail to it. Nice done. Nicely done, 7.
Sandstone Towers.
Really nice image you have here. The portrait orientation works. All these really nice leading lines and striations in the formation coming back up here to these peaks and tops. And again, appreciate that you kept the sky down to a minimum because it doesn't seem to be a whole lot going on there. 7. Eight, 7, 8, 9, 9,
General Nature Salon Group. Honorable mention, Blood Moon, Becky Witt. Early Morning Fog, Natalie Gregario. Eagle Merit, Spring at Eagle Cliff Falls, Mary Fedix. Sandstone Towers, Ellen Moskowitz.
We got a lot more birds than landscapes.
September Ornithology Bee Group. Hasty Morsel.
You know, you did a great job with the timing of this. You know, you watch these birds often enough, you kind of get a feel of when they're going to be doing something dramatic. And that doesn't take away from the job you did here. You know, considering the time of day you shot this at, it's a nice image. The thing that I would be a little concerned about, and I know it's nature, you don't always have control over a lot of elements that go on inside a picture. The time of day that you took this takes away from this a little bit. You know, excuse me. This is a little bit bright here. If you take this at a different time of the day, you may not catch this type of action, but the lighting on your bird will look a little bit nicer, but I'd like to see this again, 7.
Taking a break.
You know, you did a really nice job here. The bird looks really sharp throughout. There's a nice catch light in the eye, so that always helps break that dark area up a little bit. Certainly, the bird coming in, you know, on that branch that's on a horizontal adds a lot of interest here to me. I think this is sharp enough and strong enough here that if you wanted to crop this down a little bit and just add a little bit more focus here to the bird, I think would have added just a little bit extra punch here, but I think you did a really nice job as is, 7.
Watchful Eye.
You know, nice job you caught here. This is a fairly common position you see these birds in from time to time. You know, and your choice of orientation here works too. You know, if you'd done this in portrait or vertical, I don't think you would have had as much interest. Certainly having the bird's eye there pops a little bit. 7.
Gray Ghost.
Nice image you have here. I appreciate the fact that the bird takes up a nice portion of your frame. Certainly having its wings extended adds some interest, adds a little bit of a line going from corner to corner. The head and the eyes look pretty sharp. I wouldn't call them tack sharp as I'm looking at them, but they look pretty good. Everything looks to be in focus here. 7.
Winter Falcon.
I'm not a member, but I have to ask, is the line from your screen?
That's on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Certainly caught the bird in a nice pose. You know, I like the fact that it does have its head turned a little bit. I think, though, you probably could have gotten rid of a lot of this up here, just because that area, there's so much more color up there. And I wouldn't say it's a strong color, but there's so much more color than you have down here in this part. I think would have added a little bit more interest to it. But I'd like to see this again, 7.
Vermilion Flycatcher.
You know, you certainly caught the bird in a nice pose, and you're having it on the branch on an angle, having it on the branch with the branch being at an angle adds some interest here. I think what you're losing here a little bit though, you don't have a lot of direct light on the bird. The saturation here seems to muddle the plumage a little bit, beginning underneath the beak, coming down through the breast, and you've lost your eye kind of too. I think raising your exposure probably would have helped this out a little bit. Your background is sufficiently muted, but I just think you lost a little bit with the bird here, 6.
Harris Hawk.
You know, you certainly caught the bird in an interesting position, certainly with the wings. You know, the head and the eye look relatively sharp for what this is. From the lighting, though, I'm a little bit suspicious that this wasn't a replacement sky background. But just because I don't really see anything too out of whack with it, I can't really say it should be disqualified. But the lighting as it hits the bird and how it hits the clouds just don't jive to me as I'm looking at this. 6.
Heron on the move.
You know, you caught the bird in nice position on the rocks here. You know, I like the fact that you can still see portions of its feet. I think that always helps when you're able to do that. You probably could have cropped this down just because the bird is in really nice light here and it really pops out against the background. Having some room in front of it is okay. But you probably could just crop this down a little bit more and made that more of a portrait orientation. 7.
Mute swan on the St. Lawrence.
You know, you caught this bird at a nice point in time. You know, it takes them a while to get up into the air. They're certainly not like smaller and more graceful birds. I like its placement in the frame. You did a nice job with the exposure on the wing. You know, these white birds are difficult to expose at times. 7.
Eyes wide shut.
God bless you. God bless you. Nice interaction you have here between the two birds. You know, they seem relatively sharp here. Their plumage looks pretty good to me. The background is sufficiently muted, so you know your eye focus is really here. And I like the tighter crop that you have here too, 7.
It's not easy being me.
Certainly caught this bird in a nice position also. I like its position in the frame of the image. I think you could have exposed this a little bit better in the field or brought this up in post just to help to bring out some detail, especially in the head area here, I think would have helped. And obviously with a yellow eye, I think that would have helped that pop even a little bit more. I'd like to see this again on 7.
Hanging on.
Really nice job you did here. You know, you kept this nice, tight and compact. You know, the bird looks really sharp. I like the catch light in the eye. I think that helps a lot. And you know, you did fairly well with the exposure. You know, with having the mix of the black and white plumage on the bird, not always an easy thing to manage. And even the bulb on the flower looks relatively sharp, and that all adds some interest. 7.
Looking back.
You know, these kingfishers are really, really difficult to catch, strictly because of their size and because they move so quick. So I want to give you a little pat on the back for capturing this image. I don't know that there's a lot of interest going on here just because there is a lot of space around the bird. And while the bird does stand out against your background, catching at its position, flying away from you, to me doesn't really add much interest. 6.
Lift off.
Nice job you did here. You know, you have the bird with the wings fully extended, and catching one with the tail fully fanned out is really nice also. I think you could have used a little bit more light here, just on the head. You probably could have brushed that in post if you wanted to. And just crop this off the top to kind of make this more of a square orientation. But all this through here was handled very well. 7.
Red-breasted nuthatch.
Another nice image, again with a smaller bird. Not the easiest to do either. I like its position in the frame. I think you did well keeping it relatively sharp. There's a nice catch light in the eye. 7.
Gyrfalcon.
Okay, you know, you caught a really nice bird here. I wouldn't call it rare, but I don't see them very much in competitions. And I don't recall ever seeing one in the wild myself. You did nice with the bird in terms of freezing it. I think where you're lacking with the bird a little bit, there's a little bit of a catch light missing in the eye, and I think that's just because of the head position of the bird. But I come back to the same point I did with a previous image. You know, just the lighting with the sky and the bird, I'm kind of leaning towards a sky replacement again. So I'm just going to give it a low score rather than because there's nothing obvious here. 6.
I'm waiting.
You know, these are really interesting birds. I see them more frequently as people get back out and about and start to travel a little bit. You know, you did a really nice job here with the bird, considering the lighting you had to work with. The bird looks relatively sharp. I like its position in the frame. You know, other than catching the bird at sunrise or sunset, the only other suggestion I might have, and again, I know there's a certain amount of stuff you can and can't do around these birds. I think getting a lower position, a lower angle to shoot this bird from would have added a lot of interest. It looks like you might have been standing or at least kneeling on a rock or something that was a little bit higher than the bird itself. 7.
Killdeer after a storm.
You know, you did a nice job with the bird. I think the exposure, again, with the plumage was handled fairly well. The bird itself looks relatively sharp. I think the problem you kind of suffer from here is because the bird's brown plumage is kind of in the same color range and tonal range as the rocks and the water behind it. I think it kind of gets lost here a little bit. Again, I don't know if you could have gotten a lower angle to help this out. It certainly would have done that. And certainly a better crop here would have helped this out. 6.
Egret aloft.
You know, you did a nice job with this bird. Certainly catching it at this time of the day was not what I would call opportune, but obviously having that wing closest to us backlit does add some interest and brings out some detail in there. I think you did a decent job handling the brighter light on the head and the neck going back into the body of the bird. 7.
Going down.
Yeah, you certainly caught a nice job here catching the bird coming in for a landing. You know, its position in the frame is nice. The problem you run into, it looks like you tried to correct the background in post, and there looks to be some blurring that actually is going on around here. Sometimes, you know, we all want that nice clean bokeh background, and sometimes you just are not going to get it. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with presenting an animal in its natural background, providing the background isn't distracting, meaning that it's much brighter than your subject. 6.
Egret on elephant.
You know, this is nicely done. I like the fact that you presented this in a portrait orientation. I think it works well here just because the bird is vertical. I think you did a fairly decent job handling exposure on the bird itself. Again, white birds are really not the easiest ones to expose when you're shooting them. It looks pretty sharp throughout. I wouldn't say it's tack sharp up top, but I think it's sharp enough. 7.
Singing roller.
Nice image you have here. You did a nice job with the bird. Certainly having it with its beak open adds some interest here. Again, having one of these smaller birds be relatively sharp is not always the easiest thing to do, even if you catch them perched or set up someplace. You know, and again, having that vine or that branch in an angle adds some interest here. You probably could have cropped off a little bit more here to have this be more of a real portrait type of orientation. But as presented, I think it's pleasing. 7.
Greater yellow leg feeding.
You know, again, nice timing with this, you know, with the bird having a small fish in its mouth. It's a fairly popular bird, and catching them doing something besides just waiting around is not always the easiest thing. I like its position in the frame. There's a little bit of a catch light in the eye, so I think that helps you a little bit. And I think it did well with the exposure. I think my only comment again, if you had the ability to, was to get a little bit lower and shoot this at a little bit better of an angle. 7 though. Seven. 9. 7. 8. 7. 7. 7. 8. 7. 9. 8. 9. 7. 7, 8, 8, 7,
Ornithology B class, honorable mention, gray ghost, David Howard. Eyes wide shut, Lenny McDonald. Lift off, Wayne Greenstone. Egret on elephant, Karen Bartosik. Singing roller, Jan Bartosik. Equal merit, taking a break, Charlene Federowitz. Hanging on, Karen Bartosik. Red-breasted nuthatch, Jonathan Plizzes. Ornithology A class, tricolor heron in flight.
Certainly caught the bird at an interesting point, flying here. I like the wing position you have here. Looks relatively sharp. I think you probably could have cropped off a little bit more off the top of this. But as presented, I like the image 7.
Frozen Lake Hot Spring.
Yeah, you certainly have a interesting image here. Certainly catching the bird in that position, getting a drink of water, adds some interest here. I think the problem that you're suffering from is the background and the area surrounding the bird is really kind of in the same tonal level in terms of brightness, and it's kind of getting washed out. You know, I like the fact that it's in a third. I think that works for you here too. But I think there's just too much space in and around the bird that it just gets lost in your image, unfortunately. 6.
Who is up there?
Your interesting position you caught the bird's head in. They are pretty flexible in that way. I like the position of the bird in the frame. I think you did well there. Certainly the time of day was a nice time. You know, you have a lot of light coming in from the side as opposed to coming from the top. 7.
Thistle harvesting.
Nice job you have here. I think you did a nice job with the bird itself. I mean, it looks relatively sharp. I like its position in the frame. I think, you know, having the thistle coming out of the bottom adds some interest here. It's at a nice angle. You know, from an exposure standpoint, the thistles in the back of the bird look relatively well exposed too. And while there's no defined catch light in the bird's eye, there's enough of reflection there that the eye itself is not completely black. 7.
Reddish egret fluffing its feathers.
Nice job you had here. You know, I like the bird takes up a good portion of the frame here. Some nice detail in the feathers coming up through the head. Nice angle you have here too. You can see that a lot of these times having a lower angle on these animals does lend for a more pleasing image. 7.
At the nest.
Certainly caught the bird at an interesting point in time coming back to the nest here. I think you handled that portion of this image fairly well for the most part. You know, the nest itself looks a little underexposed. You know, and I like the other adult and the chick in the nest, so I think it adds a little interest. 7.
Kikiko hunting.
Nice job here. You know, this bird pops right off the background at you. You did a nice job handling the exposure on the plumage. It looks relatively sharp. I really like the angle you caught this from too. You can tell that you weren't standing up while you shot this, and it looks relatively sharp here too. 7.
Displaying egret.
Now these are really cool if you catch them in their breeding plumage like you did here. The bird certainly pops out against that darker background. I think you did well here with that. Certainly the timing, having the bird with its head in the air like that. It looks a little bit bright. I wouldn't say it's overexposed or blown as this is presented as I'm looking at it. Don't seem to have the kind of detail going in through the neck, up through the head, in the middle of the bird, but I'd like to see this again. 7.
Pelican in flight.
Nice job you did here, catching the bird in flight. I think you really kind of kept this to a minimum in terms of space around the bird. You left enough of it in front of the bird so it's not flying out of the frame. Your shutter speed was nice. You caught the wings at a nice position, at a nice angle here. The bird itself looks relatively sharp. 7.
Hummingbird.
Nice job you did here. Catching these birds, again, is not always the easiest thing to do. You know, and when you're doing this, you don't mind a little wing blur here because of the animal you're dealing with. You still want to make sure that the rest of the bird is relatively sharp and in focus, and I think you accomplished that here. 7.
Perfect painted bunting.
I don't know that any image is quote-unquote perfect, but you did a really good job here. You know, your exposure here in this bird was done very well. Again, your exposure on these birds sometimes can get away from you and it affects the image quality. But the bird is nice and sharp throughout. Takes up a nice portion of the frame. And, you know, again, no defined catch light in the eye, but there's enough of a reflection there for me. 7.
Osprey fresh kill.
You know, you did a pretty nice job with this bird. You know, I like the fact this is more of a panoramic presentation. I think that works well with the wings spread and the position that it's in here. Certainly, the bird having a fish adds some interest here. I don't know if this was a really tight crop. The head and the eyes look a little soft. I wouldn't say that there's no detail there, you can't see it. But I'd like to see this again, please, 7.
Got it.
Again, this is another one of these timing images where I think you did well with your timing. Here, I think you could have cropped this image. I think that would have helped this out a lot. This reflection is not really strong in a way that adds to this up here or to the overall image. So to crop this here probably would have made for a much stronger image. I wouldn't say this was done at the middle of the day, but certainly, unfortunately, there is some shadow on the bird's head, and it's just because of the way the head is turned. 6.
Juvenile breed.
Interesting subject. It certainly pops off the screen here. Stands out against your background. I think you did a nice job with this. You are missing a little bit of a catch light, but there's a little bit of a rim light type of effect in the eye. The bird itself looks sharp, and they're not the biggest birds to begin with. Again, I think you could have cropped this a little bit just to add a little bit more impact to the bird in the frame. 7.
Preening puffin.
You caught this bird at an interesting point in time too. These are really cool looking birds. And again, dealing with the exposure with the white and the black is not always the easiest thing to do. What you have of the bird that you see is relatively sharp. Probably could have, again, just crop this off. This could have been done like in a square presentation almost, just to bring the focus in on the bird a little bit more. 7.
Egret reflection.
Here your reflection is stronger than it was in a couple frames we saw before this. Your timing here was pretty good while the bird's beak is in the water. I think your exposure here is a little bit off. I think the bird's plumage, there isn't enough detail in the back through and down in through the body here. Certainly, I'd like to see a little bit more light in the bird. 6.
In the wings.
All right. Here with this bird, like we saw a little bit earlier, there's a difference here is that because this bird is a little bit more prominent in your frame, you can certainly see a little bit more of it. You put the wing position here in a nice area, and certainly having the bird vertical here works for you here too. 7.
The yawn.
Nice timing here. Certainly having the beak open adds some interest. If I'm not mistaken here, it looks like the membrane is closed across the eye also. I think you did a fairly decent job with the exposure. This wasn't really taken at sunrise or sunset either. I think what helps you here is the bird's darker plumage. Again, you probably could have cropped this and put this in a portrait orientation. Just because the sky behind the bird, in front of the bird, is really not all that interesting. But I'd like to see this again. 7.
Green heron stealth mode.
Really nice timing on this bird also, you know, catching it in this position adds a lot of interest. You know, the reflection of the water is okay. I wouldn't say it really adds anything great to the image. But since your bird is your subject, I think you did a nice job here with it, 7.
Reddish egret on the run.
Nice timing here. You know, these birds will move around in the shallows, you know, chasing the fish, so I think you did a nice job catching it. It takes up a nice amount of the frame. I think the bird could look a little bit sharper all throughout, but I wouldn't say that it was necessarily soft as I'm looking at it. 7.
Looking at you, looking at me.
Really nice job you did here. You know, the first thing that gets me is that the bird takes up so much of the frame. So kudos there. Nice sharpness throughout most of the bill, throughout the plumage. Certainly the head up around the eyes looks really nice and sharp. And I think you did a really nice job with your exposure because the bird stands out against your background. 7.
Seagulls get no respect.
You know, like the bird's position in the frame. It looks relatively sharp. It certainly pops out against the darker background here. I know some people go back and forth, and by that I mean other judges, with the thing they call virtual legs because you can't see the feet of the bird. But that's not always possible, especially if you have a bird that's wading in water. You can still have a pleasing image with that type of bird in that environment. I'd like to see this again, 7.
Female shoveler.
Again, you know, you did a nice job with the bird itself here. You know, having its head mid-water is what these birds do. There's a nice little catch light in the eye. You did a nice job with the exposure and the plumage. Here, though, I think you probably could have propped this all down here. And again, that just helps bring the focus back here in the bird here. 7.
Song sparrow in the fall.
Did a nice job with the bird here. I like its position in the frame. You know, certainly standing on the wood like that, I perched on it, is a nice thing. A little bit warm down here. You probably could have knocked that down a little bit. But you did a nice job with the bird in the background, sufficiently muted that it pops off at you a little bit. 7.
Kestrel on the hunt.
You know, a nice job you did capturing the bird. Looks relatively sharp. Does have the catch light in the eye. You know, certainly have the tail fanned out, add some interest too. I think if I were to make a comment, you probably could have bumped up your shutter speed a little bit just to freeze that left wing closest to us, because there is a little bit of a blur there. But I'd like to see us again, 7.
Thinking about heaven. Hardhead.
Interesting composition you have here. Yeah, I think you did a nice job capturing the bird on this perch. Certainly, you know, having that flower and bloom adds some interest here. I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more lighting on the bird, just to help bring out some more detail in the plumage of the bird, especially getting up around the head. But the bird itself looks fairly well handled, 7.
East at dawn.
You know, you did a nice job here catching this at the time of day that you did. Obviously, there's a lot of nice interest in the sky with the different colors that you have in the cloud formations. Certainly, the geese had some interest here, but I wouldn't say this is a real ornithological type of image. I think it's more of a general nature image. You know, if you re-enter this in another contest or another category at some time, it might do a little bit better. 6.
Hen fight.
You know, you caught some nice action here. I think you did a nice job keeping the birds filling a really good portion of the frame here. Again, I think your shutter speed could have been a little bit higher just because the wings seem to have some blur in them. The bodies of the birds themselves look relatively sharp and in focus for that matter. 6.
Chilean flamingo.
You know, I have an interesting subject here. Certainly its presentation in the frame adds some interest, you know, with the bird's curved neck going through its head and curved bill. I think you did really well there. It certainly stands out against the darker background. Again, I think this area up here is really just actually blown. And I know it's not a real big portion of the bird's plumage, but it really, my eye really kind of went to that once I started looking at this image. You know, because outside that area, the rest of the bird, I think, was really fairly well handled. I'd like to look this at again in 7.
Lining up lunch.
Nice job here. Certainly the tighter portrait orientation helps here. Keeps your focus on the bird, and I think you did a fairly decent job handling the bird itself. A little catch light in the eye. Again, always nice to see when you can catch that. The plumage looks relatively sharp. Your exposure was pretty decent here. 7.
0 in.
You know, again, you know, this is a nicer scene, but it's really more of a general nature scene, simply because, you know, that one single solitary bird doesn't take up enough of the frame that I would call this ornithological. 6.
Virginia rail foraging.
Rails are tough, you know, they're really skittish birds, so I want to give you a little bit of a pat on the back for catching one here in this position. To me, though, the bird itself doesn't look very sharp. I don't know if this was a really tight crop or, you know, what was going on here, but the bird itself, the plumage looks a little soft, and the background is muted, but there's a little something going on there. And again, I'm just going to attribute that to a crop that was a little over tight. But you caught the bird in nice position, otherwise 6.
Immature bald eagle.
You know, I like the idea that you decided to present this in a monochrome manner. I think it does add some strength to the bird, and I think you did fairly well with that. You know, I think it's a little bit overexposed as an image. You probably could have brought this down a little bit, and I don't think it would have done anything to really harm the bird itself, because it is in such a strong position, especially when you go to look at the head. But I'd like to see this again, 7.
Foggy morning fishing.
God bless you. Nice image you have here. Certainly catching the bird at this time of the day adds some interest here. I think given the fact that there wasn't a lot of great strong light here, I think you probably could have bumped up your saturation a little bit, because these are fairly colorful birds. And I'm not talking like about, you know, 8 or 10 points on a saturation slider, just a little bit, just to help it pop out a little bit. I'd like to see it again though, 7.
Mother and chicks.
You know, you certainly caught this at a nice point in time. I think the birds take up enough of the frame where it certainly adds some interest here. I think overall, though, I think your image as it's presented or projected is a little underexposed. I think it could have been brought up a little bit in post, and you wouldn't have blown any of the plumage on the birds. But you know, from an impact standpoint, you know, I think you caught this at a nice point in time. Otherwise, 6.
Royal spoonbill balancing.
You know, you caught this bird in a nice position. I like the pose, I like its position in the frame. It is lacking a little light at the top of the head where the eye is, but that's not my main concern. My main concern is that line going through the middle. I can't tell if that's like some type of concrete barrier or if that's just something that's naturally occurring in the water. I'm not going to DQ it, but I'm going to give it a 6. Seven, 8, 9, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8, 8, 9, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 8, 7, 8, 7, 7, 7, 8, 8, 7.
Ornithology A, honorable mention. Who is up there? Alan Stein. Reddish egret fluffing its feathers, Susan Little. Yukiko hunting, David Unger. Pelican in flight, Jim Duffy. Hummingbird, Judy Sedlak. Reddish egret on the run, Susan Little. Seagulls get no respect, David Unger. Song sparrow in the fall, Jim Duffy. Lining up lunch, Linda Brush. Immature bald eagle, Bruce Michael. Equal merit, thistle harvesting, Bruce Michael. Perfect painted bunting, Wendy Milligan. Looking at you, looking at me, Duffy Ritz.
Oh, yeah, you gotta go a little
9:30,
quicker, Al.
okay, yep.
Somebody reading?
Ornithology Slan. At the nest.
7,
Feed me.
7,
Backlit bluebird with bug.
6,
Mama, can you hear me?
7,
Wood stork with nesting material.
7,
Am I handsome or what?
7,
Mating colors, red-winged blackbird.
7,
Indigo bunting singing.
7,
Spotlit scarlet macaw.
6,
Juvenile red-tailed hawk.
6,
The early bird.
6,
Playful immature martial eagle.
6,
Woody.
7,
Snowy owl with prey.
7,
Spoonbill.
7,
Winter robin eating crabapple.
6,
My turn.
7,
White ibis.
7,
Mandarin duck.
7,
The Ani Strike,
7,
Cattle Egret Landing,
7,
Female Ruby-throated Hummingbird,
6,
Sunrise Blooms,
7,
Black-crowned Night Heron,
7,
and then there were 2, Laughing Doves,
6,
Hummingbird and Scarlet Bee-Bomb,
7,
Morning Dove Flight,
7,
Rufous Nate Lark,
6,
Sparrow in the Treetop,
7,
Gannet,
7,
Tern with Fish,
7,
7, 6,
7,
7.
Hummer on Mexican Sunflower,
7,
Squabble in the Rain,
7,
On Watch,
7,
Black-crowned Night Heron,
6,
At the Beach Searching for Lunch,
6,
Blue Jay Landing,
7,
Lilac-breasted Roller,
7,
Eagle Landing,
7,
Puffin,
7,
Mature Bald Eagle with Dinner,
6,
Where's Mom,
7, 7, 8, 8, 8, 8, 9, 9, 7, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, 9, 7, 7, 7, 8, 8, 8, 8, quick comment, 7 for this, but it's difficult to get these birds both sharp. I think one of them is and one isn't. Eight. Seven. Seven. Nine. 8. 7.
'Ornithology Salon, honorable mention, Feed Me, James Lott. Mama, Can You Hear Me, Thomas Newt. Wood stork with nesting material, Laura Lakos. Am I handsome or what? Stanley Kroon. Spoonbill, Chris Cleaver. White Ibis, Jack Moskowitz. The Ani Strut, Thomas Newt. Sparrow in the Treetop, Mary Bettis. Gannet, Wayne Cleaver. Tern with Fish, Chris Cleaver. Hummer on Mexican Sunflower, Linda Van Setters. On Watch, James Lott. Puffin, Chris Clear. Equal Merit, Mating Colors Red-Winged Blackbird, Butch Van Setters. Indigo Bunting Singing, Ellen Moskowitz. Cattle Egret Landing, Laura Lakos. Sunrise Loons, Butch Van Setters. Eagle Landing, Wayne Clearer. That's it.
Good job, Wendy.